Mr. Jones owned a cotton plantation and many slaves. One day he was talking to the owner of the plantation next to his, and Mr. Jones was lamenting the fact that times were tough. He was having to work his slaves harder than ever, and was having trouble with some of them being disobedient or trying to run away. The other plantation owner said he knew someone who could help.
Day 1.
One day Mr. Jones called his slaves together so a man named Mr. Smith could talk to them. Before beginning, Mr. Smith whispered to Mr. Jones, "Whatever I say, do not contradict me or interfere, and I promise you your slave troubles will end." "My name is Mr. Smith," he said to the slaves, "and this may be the happiest day of your lives. From today forward, you will no longer be slaves, but free men." Mr. Jones was so shocked he started to step forward, but Mr. Smith gestured for him to remain silent. He did, only because the other plantation owner had spoken so highly of Mr. Smith's skills. "You are no longer the property of Mr. Jones," Mr. Smith continued. "You are free. No more will you be forced to labor for the benefit of Mr. Jones. Now you can work for yourselves." Now the slaves were all murmuring and looking at each other. Many were smiling, many were looking puzzled. "In fact, you are now free to leave the plantation whenever you want," Mr. Smith said. "However, since we are surrounded by other plantations, if you leave, some other plantation owner will likely claim you as his own the moment you set foot on his property. So I urge you not to risk your newfound freedom by doing something so foolish. Instead, I suggest that you stay here, no longer as slaves, but as willing participants and part owners of this plantation. Yes, this is now your plantation." Mr. Jones bit his tongue to keep from objecting. "For now, we might as well leave Mr. Jones in charge," said Mr. Smith, "since he's the only one with any experience at running a plantation, which is quite a complicated thing to manage. But he will no longer be your master, but just another worker on the plantation. In fact, he will now be using his organizational and management skills to serve you. Whatever problems you may have had with him before, you are now all equals, and you need each other to make this work. If we all cooperate and work together, we can all reap the benefits together. In honor of this happy occasion, I present you this new symbol of togetherness and cooperation, this flag, which shall be the emblem of the new free Jones plantation." He held up the new flag, but most of those listening were still too amazed to respond. "And this shall be our motto," Mr. Smith announced. "We work together as free men for our mutual benefit, pledging our allegiance to the Jones plantation, which stands for prosperity, liberty, and justice for all. To celebrate, everyone has the rest of the day off. Enjoy your freedom, do as you please, and be back here tomorrow morning, bright and early, so that we may begin work on this great and noble new endeavor as equal free men." Finally convinced that Mr. Smith was serious, the former slaves applauded and cheered.
Day 2.
"We all want this plantation to do well," Mr. Smith said at the beginning of the next meeting, "so we can all share in the benefits. We all know that it takes a lot of effort to make a cotton plantation work. Just because you're all free doesn't mean you can stop working. In fact, since you're now working for yourselves, I expect you to work even harder than ever before, but now with pride and joy, knowing that you're working for yourselves. Of course, there still have to be rules. If everyone just does whatever he wants, the plantation won't produce anything. This experiment will fail and we'll all starve. You should be thankful that Mr. Jones has agreed to stay on to lend his knowledge and skills to this endeavor, and I trust you will all do your own part to make this work. Several of you have been chosen to act as project supervisors to manage different aspects of the operation, to make sure everyone is doing his assigned job, to make sure that the rules are followed, and so on. The rest of you may head out in the fields to start your first day of work as free men."
Day 3.
The next morning, Mr. Smith had a grim expression on his face as the daily meeting began. "I have an unpleasant duty to do today," he said. "Yesterday, Charles was caught keeping some of the cotton he picked, presumably to sell for his own personal profit. That is against the rules. That is stealing. For that, Charles must be punished." Two men tied Charles to the whipping post. "I take no joy in this," Mr. Smith continued, "but you must understand, if we do not maintain order, if we do not have rules that we all abide by, then the plantation will fail, and we will all suffer." The whip cracked against Charles' back. "But if we all pitch in for the common good, then we can all prosper. Being free doesn't mean you should be selfish and greedy. We must each do our assigned duties and obey the rules, and then we can all benefit, and each of you will receive your appropriate share of the profits." A young man named Samuel stepped forward. "But if you and Mr. Jones decide the rules and whip us if we disobey, how is that any different from what we had before?" "How can you say that?" Mr. Smith asked. "I'm shocked. You were a slave before, and now you're free. Things still need to be managed and organized by those best qualified to do so. Do you know how to run a plantation, Samuel?" "Well, no," he answered. "But if we're free, why do we get no say in what the rules are and how things work?" "I'm surprised at your ingratitude," Mr. Smith answered. "None of you know how a plantation is run, so you're in no position to be making decisions about how things are done here. You don't seem to appreciate all the things that Mr. Jones provides for you, from protecting you from all the outside threats you know nothing about, those who would come here, capture and enslave you if not for Mr. Jones' protection, to making sure that you all have food and housing, tools to work with, you're cared for when sick and injured, and so on. There wouldn't be a plantation at all, no cotton to pick, no land to plant and harvest if not for him. You should be grateful that he's made possible the level of comfort you now have. Your lives would be far worse if not for him. Nevertheless, as free and equal participants in this endeavor, from now on at each meeting, any worker may have 2 minutes to ask questions or voice suggestions or complaints. With that, the workers all seemed satisfied and headed out again to the fields to pick the cotton.
Day 4.
I have a big announcement, Mr. Smith said as the day of the meeting began. Mr. Jones' cousin is here, and not just to visit and see how our project is coming along. It has been decided that from now on, you will be deciding who will manage the plantation. Of course, this job can't be done by just anyone, but every 3 months we will have a special meeting at which all the workers will vote on whether we think Mr. Jones should run the plantation or whether we think his cousin, Mr. Johnson, should run the plantation. That means that ultimately you are in charge because you will be deciding which man you want running things on your behalf. If you don't like the way things are being managed, you now have the power to change it. Amazed and pleased, the workers headed out again to the fields to pick the cotton. Days passed, months passed, a year passed, and the plantation continued to operate as before. Sometimes Mr. Jones was in charge, sometimes Mr. Johnson was in charge, but the day-to-day routine stayed exactly the same. The workers worked hard, long hours every day, and still had little to show for it. Every day the meeting would begin with them all reciting the Jones Plantation motto, "We work together as free men for our mutual benefit, pledging our allegiance to the Jones Plantation, which stands for prosperity, liberty, and justice for all." One day Mr. Smith announced, "Samuel is asked to say a few words this morning, and whatever the rest of us may think of his ideas and opinions, we are all free here, and that means we are all allowed to speak our minds. So, Samuel, you have 2 minutes. Begin." Samuel stepped forward, looking scared. "I was excited when all this started," he began, glancing nervously at Mr. Smith and Mr. Jones. "But don't you all see what's happened here? Nothing's changed. We're all still slaves." There were grumbles of disagreement from the crowd. "They tell us what to do and whip us if we don't. They still make all the rules and punish us if we disobey. They let us make suggestions and complain about things, but they never really change anything. They let us choose between Mr. Jones and Mr. Johnson, but what's the difference? The situation stays the same. We do all the work and they take as much as they want and decide how much they'll let us keep. They live in luxury, made rich by the cotton we pick. We do all the work and have to build our own huts, grow our own food, and take care of ourselves. They leave us just enough that we don't revolt or run away. This is not freedom. We're all still slaves. They've only changed the words they use, but nothing else has changed. They say we're all free and equal, but we're not. They command and we obey. That's not freedom. That's not equality. They say we're free to leave, but all that means is that we're free to be someone else's slave. Why should we work or obey the rules? We didn't agree to this. They made the system. They forced it on us. They control and rob us and call it freedom. They've deceived you into thinking that being able to choose which slave master you'll work for is the same as being free. It's not. Open your eyes. If you keep what you produce, they call it stealing. When they take what you produce, they call it sharing and fair distribution. Can't you see that this is all your time? Ease up, Samuel, Mr. Smith announced calmly. At his gesture, 2 supervisors grabbed Samuel by the arms and led him to the whipping post. "I'm sorry, Samuel, but you've broken the rules. There are rules against encouraging others not to work and encouraging others to break the rules. You're only hurting all of us with your discontentment and your complaining and your disobedience." The whip fell and Samuel let out a grunt. "Without rules, without order, all would be lost. Without law, there would be chaos. We can't just behave as wild animals, each doing whatever he pleases. We must all follow the plan and all do our duty for the betterment of everyone. And those who do not must be punished." The whip fell again and blood flowed freely from Samuel's back. "Samuel, it is you who are stealing from the others. When you don't do your assigned work, you are making more work for others. When you disobey the rules, it is you who are endangering the future of everyone else here. You are the thief. You are the criminal. You are the one trying to destroy the arrangement that keeps us all safe and prosperous." At every lash of the whip, the other workers cheered louder and louder, some yelling curses at Samuel. "Being spoiled and selfish, you complain about everything, talking as if you're oppressed. But you are the one ruining things. You are the one keeping us from being all we could be. It is your greed and your rebelliousness that is hurting all of us. They all play by the rules," Mr. Smith said, gesturing at the others. "What makes you think that you don't have to? You think you're above the law?" There were loud yells of agreement as the whip fell again. "We must maintain order," Mr. Smith proclaimed. "To make this plantation great, to make it so that we can all be happy and prosperous, to have the society we want, there have to be rules. We all have to contribute our fair share to this great endeavor, and we cannot tolerate actions and attitudes that seek to undermine the amazing things that together as free men we have achieved and will continue to achieve. Mr. Jones was smiling as he gave Mr. Smith a pat on the back. The crowd was cheering so loudly that none of them had noticed that Samuel had died.
So today I want to go through a little more about how we languish in our language and why we can never get undone from the mess we're in, because the words are basically Phoenician, Latin, and Greek amalgamations with some British thrown in there. But it's all, a lot of our language is meant to deceive or have secret hidden meanings. So let's get into it. Now, when you go into court, we're based on water. Our legal system is under Roman Latin law, and we're considered to be at sea. We're fictitious characters, we're straw men, but it's all based on water. And this goes way back to the 13 and 1400s when Pope Boniface VIII said he's going to be the vicar for Christ and created the first SQV Unum Sanctum Trusts and put us on ships. And that's why we always have in our admiralty court, we're on our citizenship, we're on our leadership, we're on our relationship, we're on our ownership, friendship, hardship, partnership, membership, internship, warship, sportsmanship, sponsorship, relationship, craftsmanship, companionship. Why are we always on a ship? When we go into court, we go in through the docket, and there we find the bailiff who's going to bail us out. So everything's based on water, including our banking system. This is why we have a currency and we have liquid assets, and we have deposit slips, and we have a docket. We have cash flow, we have frozen assets and liquid assets. So everything is based on water when we're in the court system, and we're, just like I said, straw man and fictitious characters. Now this is Jordan Maxwell, or I forget his other name. Judges have a Masonic hammer or gavel which they hit to declare the word of law. The idea of law comes from the biblical 10 stone commandments, and so it is said that you, quote, break the law. You're breaking the commandment. Judges always sit on 3-tier high platform representing the first 3 blue degrees of Freemasonry. The same tri-tier platform is found at Congress and the altar in most Catholic and Protestant churches, 3 tiers high. That's also why you give someone the 3rd degree related to the 3rd degree of Masonry, where the initiate is asked a series of probing questions he must answer correctly in order to become a master Mason, which is the 3rd degree. There's usually a gate around the church altars, just as there are gates and swinging doors in every courtroom, called the docket. The congregation at church all stand up to recognize the priest, just as all rise when the judge walks in. Judge takes a recess because he is in court playing a game of 10 commandments, with lawyers who play the dialectic protagonist-antagonist game, bouncing the advantage into each other's courts. In the courtroom, witnesses must place their hand on the Old New Testament before giving their testimony, just as priest's sermon is often called testimony, also known as mon from moon in testimony, and sermon. Also, to testify used to be you had to grab your testicles in the old, and that's why women could not testify, because they could not grab their testicles to assert themselves in court. Also, the black robes are Satan robes, and the gavel is the phallic gavel of a penis that he's ruling with. As a witness swears in, one hand is placed on the Bible while the other is held up. In church, where parishioners feel the Holy Spirit offering during psalm, they will hold one or both hands up to praise the Lord. Quote, then when you get further into Saturn, you begin to understand his color is black, and he was God of one of the many different Semitic tribes or groups, and one of his symbols was a square. Then you get into the square black mortarboard that the university or high school students wear when they graduate. When you graduate from high school, you come out of the processionally with a black robe, which is black for saffron, the god of Hebrews, requiring that you wear the square mortarboard on the top of your head. As I said, this is Saturnian in principle. The square mortarboards are, of course, used by the Freemasons for their plaster, so that is why you wear a square mortarboard when you graduate, ultimately becoming an alumni. It all has to do with Freemasonry. It all has to do with control of the education in this country. Freemasonry is owned by the Jesuits. He doesn't go into there. Jordan Maxwell doesn't go Jesuit, or recently has. Square mortarboard on the head is usually black, the color of Saturn, one of the ancient Hebrew gods. This is the same black used on the robe the judge wears when he is going to throw you in jail, because black represents Saturn. Saturn is the old Semitic god. This is why churches and courtrooms look the same today, because when you go into churches, you sit out here with the poor folks in the chairs out here in the pews, but you cannot go in onto the lifted higher elevation. You can't go inside the gate. You can't go inside the little doors. Only the priest can go inside there and officiate you. You stay on the outside with the poor folks. The altar is always raised at least 3 tiers, because in Egypt that was the way it was always done. The altar was always raised so the people could see the representative of God dressed in black. The priest comes out on the altar dressed in black, and he's officiating for you. He is the mediator between you and God. That is the same thing that happens in the courtroom. You walk in and you're a part of the poor folks sitting out there on your ship, and here's the fence or gate that separates you. The attorneys, who are known as bar attorneys for British accredited registry, registered under the City of London, all U.S. bar attorneys, you must be a member of the bar to practice in the corporation of the courts, who are for-profit corporations in our legal system, and the attorneys are pledged to the British accredited registry, or bar, where the corporate papers are based in Puerto Rico. The attorneys go inside the gate, and you are the mouthpiece to talk to God and see if you can get off, and the lawyers will be the mediator between God and the judge who judges you and man. That is where all this comes from in our society of today. All right, we can go into court. We have a hearing and present oral arguments to plead our case. The spoken word over the written word. That's why it's Phoenician, or definition. Definition. Get it? This is why we languish, Old French languere, be listless, pine, grieve, fall ill. From vulgar Latin languere, from Latin languere, to be faint or weak, with our definition of language. Alpha, beta are the first 2 letters that make up our language. Once you start to understand the meaning of words, you will start to see this reality. There are 4 things to consider. 1, definitions need to be understood. 2, etymology of words needs to be studied. It's the study of the origin of words. Phonics is utilized in everything. This is where the Phoenicians are attached to phonics. Example, there's 3 definitions that mean completely different things. There's a letter C, there's the ocean sea, and then you can see with your eyes. 4, word splitting, the practice of splicing words into various ways to find hidden elements contained within them. An example of the word splitting is language. Lang, gu, age. Lan means monster that protects the noble ones. Gu, the god of war, and age, the age of the zodiac. So the final meaning of the word language is a monster of war that protects the noble ones, or golden gods, throughout the ages. Language, as we languish. A little sidebar fun. Why do we have noses that run and feet that smell? Why do we drive on a parkway yet park on a driveway? Why at a ball field, if it hits the foul pole, it's considered a fair ball and a home run? And why do we call it a freezer burn? Did you notice the term words is an anagram for the term sword? Switch the letter S in the term words to the front and you get the term sword. The letter S goes one way and then the other. So it also crosses over the other side equally and can go both ways, like the S in snake, serpent, slither, sin. The letter M is shaped like a mountain. V for a valley. T as in top, B for breasts, and D for dome, and C for crescent. Do you think this is by mistake? Do you think this just happens? No, this is all by design, folks. Words are like swords because they can be used to harm you. In a way, words are more powerful than swords for the reason that they can harm or heal you at the deepest levels of your being. In Greek, the term word means logos. The word logos is defined as, quote, the source that controls the universe, the written word or inspiration of God, or a logical and rational argument. In ancient Greek philosophy, the word logos is defined as, quote, the controlling principle in the universe. Belief includes the word lie in it, in the middle, to be lying with an F. Alien, I a lion. They're lying to you folks about the aliens. And then when you tell your vision, you tell your lie to your vision.
Grammatical deceptions. In 1966, lost the pound and we converted into dollars, pounds and dollars. The pound was a weighted note on silver, was equivalent to 1 pound of silver. So it was a monetary system that operated on actual weights of metal, shillings and pennies and what have you, florins, whatever it was. It was all based on an amount of silver, and the pound note was a representation of 1 pound of silver. So you could take the pound note in and redeem it for 1 pound of silver. In 1966, that changed from from a pound to a promissory note system, like the US Federal Reserve promissory note system. But something else changed in 1966 as well. And what happened was our schools removed grammar and Latin from the schools in 1966. So prior to that, at school we learned grammar and Latin. And Latin were the roots of the English language, or many of the roots of the English language. So, and my father used to call Latin the math of English. And when, in 1966, when the school got rid of Latin and grammar out of the curriculum, my father bitterly complained to the school and said that the students will become illiterate. They won't know how to read if you take those things out of the curriculum. Well, I'm going to show you exactly what's happening. It's strange that this happened in 1966 too, when the pound went to the dollar and grammar and Latin were removed from the schools. So it's funny that is. But I'm going to just show you just how stupid and dumbed down Australians have become in a grammatical deception, or in a grammatical sense. I'm going to write Commonwealth of Australia in 3 different formats, and you will be able to read the whole 3 of them, or you will assume you can read the 3 of them. But after I've done this, I'll just explain the difference between the 3 of them. Okay? First, let's write it in English. You can read that, Commonwealth of Australia. Now let's write it in ancient Latin. And this is going to be strange. Not many people are aware of this or aware that it's relevant today. But ancient Latin is the official language of the Vatican. That's strange too, isn't it? So I'll write that. Okay, same words. Hyphen. That's an L there. Commonwealth of Australia, written in an ancient Latin style text. And we have here, which is the 2 hyphens in between the 3 signs or the 3 words. Now I'm going to write something in Dog Latin, and Dog Latin is a corruption of the essence of the text. It's also known as the text or the Latin for the illiterate. So it's a language that's used by illiterate people that can't read, that don't know what's going on. I'll write the same words. English, ancient Latin with the hyphens, and dog Latin. The Latin for the illiterate, people that can't read. Now, English, these are all three very recognized languages. But the thing about the grammatical standing of these three types of written language is that they don't have any jurisdiction with each other on the one document. So if you've got a page of text and it contains English and contains dog Latin, there is no correspondence between those two languages written on that paper. And that's the reason why when the currency of our nation, of our country, was changed from a weighted silver, which was a de jure or real money, into a promissory note type of a money, which is based on the United States Federal Reserve promissory notes, which is really called a company scrip or internal accounting notes. That's all it is, internal banking notes. After that happened in 1966, they removed the grammar and the Latin from the school in order that the people start to assume that this is English. Now, you know something's wrong with that. If you saw that written everywhere and you saw a hyphen in between the words, even if you didn't know your Latin and your grammar, you would instantly know, well, that doesn't look right, there's something wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. It is another language. But when you read this here, Commonwealth of Australia, without the hyphens, you will assume that to be English. And that mistake that has deliberately been allowed for you to do is actually what destroys you from standing as a true Australian, a national, or being a part of the real Australia, into coming down here into being a foreign citizen of a private foreign bank. But all of the Australians that are in here, such as the Queensland Police, the government, all the government workers and all that, they believe that they are Australians. They believe that. But grammatically, and the fact, as a fact stands, they are the account holders of the foreign United States Securities and Exchange Commission, the foreign United States Federal Reserve, because this is a registered company with the United States Securities and Exchange Commission, written in dog Latin. And dog Latin, the way they make dog Latin is by using the grammatical rules of English and mixing it with the written hieroglyphic, all uppercase text of ancient Latin. And by removing the hyphens, they use the grammatical rules of English instead of the grammatical rules of Latin, which are two very different types of rules, grammatical rules of each one of these texts, in order to make it look like normal English. That is the grammatical deception. I call it the Justinian deception, because this whole system of deceiving people into going from the public, common English, going from common English public into the private contracts of Rome, the private contracts of Babylonian text, of fiction, of a lie, is done through the grammatical deception of making you believe that this text is English when it has no jurisdiction whatsoever. So if you get your driver license or your passport and you assume that your name, where it says your name and your name is written in an all uppercase dog Latin text that is really a hieroglyphic sign or illustrative text. It's symbolic text, which cannot be a name. Only a name can only exist in proper English as a capitalized with the first letters of each word capitalized. That forms a true name. Now that you understand that, if you go onto the website under the Governor General, and you will start to see just how confusing things start to happen. Even if you ring the Governor General, ring the office and ask him, they've written hyphen which is right. But what that is doing, when they write Governor General in the all uppercase text that is in ancient Latin, what they're saying is that this Governor General belongs to the Vatican. But then what they do, they've got that written on the website, which is now in proper ancient Latin with the hyphen there, which renders the two signs, Governor and General, coming together as two signs in order to make one sentence in sign. But then when they write it in English, in the common English up here, the correct language, they write it like this. They hyphenate the English. Very clever trick that these usurping foreign corporations, these foreign corporate banks are doing to the people of Australia. Because what that does is destroys the English text, because to create, to make two words appear as one name, as in Governor General, this would translate as this. Governor Grunel. Governor Grunel. Because that hyphen there is used to join in English, is used to join a broken word back together, or join two words together as one. And that's how some words are made before the word is actually made into one word. The hyphen is used until eventually, as time goes by, the word becomes one. But at this present time in the dictionary, there is no such word as Governor General, and there's also no such words or name as Governor General with a hyphen. It does not exist in the English language. So what they're saying is that this Governor General is the property of the Vatican. The Vatican owns the City of London. The City of London owns probably, more than likely, owns the US Federal Reserve. And the City of London is the bar. And the bar are all the lawyers. So any lawyer that is in government, such as the Prime Ministers and what have you, most of them are, or the very Prime Minister that signed us up to Unidroit, in 1973 was Gough Whitlam, who was a lawyer who had sworn an oath to the bar, and the bar was the City of London, which is 1 square mile inside London, that belongs to the Vatican. So what's happened is somehow or other, the Vatican has taken away the proper, true government of Australia and replaced it with one of their corporations. But the only problem with the Vatican, even though it operates under proper, recognised ancient Latin signs, we have been given a fraud. This is a fraud. It's not real. I'm not sure what it is all about, but I do notice that the Vatican seems to always be plundering the riches of the world. So maybe through this sort of a system. They also give us, on your driver licenses, as I said before, your driver licenses, your passports, etc. You also get your name written in all uppercase Dog Latin, without the hyphens. That's Dog Latin. So the Dog Latin is the language for the illiterate. It's Babylonian text. It's text that reads absolutely nothing. If you translate this Governor General without the hyphen into English, it simply translates back like this. Full stop. General. Full stop. Because Governor General, written in Dog Latin, which is using the ancient Latin text with the grammatical rules of English, renders this as Governor full stop General, which is not the Governor General. And that is the same with your name. Written in that, like on your driver licenses or on your passport, etc., translates to full stop, full stop, full stop. So the whole system is a lie. It's just an absolute lie, because they are using a Dog Latin text, which is a debased text under Latin, under the legal dictionary, Black's Law Dictionary. Dog Latin is the Latin for the illiterate, for the stupid people that can't read. But in the English dictionary, the Webster's English Dictionary, Dog Latin is a debased text, a debased language, and the word debased means in the Webster's Dictionary, criminal. It also means debauched. It also means immoral. So that means it is against God. You have to also remember that the people that are ruling this type of Dog Latin world, this fake government, are people like the Fabians, who believe in governments like Hitler and like Stalin, which maintains total control over the people. It puts the state ahead of the people, which is absolutely dangerous, because we all know the history of Hitler and Stalin and other governments in the past, Pol Pot, that have used this type of system where the state becomes more powerful than the people. But the only way that the state in the past has come more powerful, is guns. But this lot of governments, this new world order, are doing it through deception, deceit, lies, trickery. And once they've gotten hold of a Hitler-style or Stalin-style government as a one complete world government, then who is there to stop them? They will have achieved their absolute goal at total control over the population of the planet. And then the culling will start. They'll say it's for the better, but it only suits them. It suits them. Doesn't suit these. It suits the Vatican, and it suits their corporations, and it also suits the one-stroke dollar. It's the biggest lie that's perpetrated. It is the biggest grammatical deception perpetrated against the people of Australia, the people of the world. And that's how they did it, through the grammatical deceptions of language.
Question: what is the most important word of all time? The answer is no. Most people will spell it N-O, but the answer is K-N-O-W. Completely different meanings, but exactly sounding the same. It's meant to confuse by obfuscation. Matthew 11:15. He that hath ears to hear, let him hear. Earth is art of the heart. Earth. Move the H to the front and we get heart. Hear, hear. Nothing is true. Everything is a lie, folks. They play games with us for a long time. All right. Another word that has a strong connection to the term word is the term light. Light is sometimes referred to as a photon. In physics, a photon is usually indicated by the symbol Y, which is the lowercase of the Greek symbol gamma. Some etymologists believe that the Greek word gamma is where the word grammar originated from. In English, grammar means, quote, the study of classes of words, their inflections, and their functions and relations in sentence, end quote. Spells are cast in schools and spelling, and the bell rings at each class to disassociate from the last lesson. This comes from Pavlov's dog theory, where they rang the bell and the dog would salivate. So they instituted the bell system into public schools and most schools so that the children, when the bell would ring, would forget what they just learned. You must remember the people in power do not want you to take their power. So they'll give you a little way up, and then they'll set up progressive taxes, but they'll never get to the top. You'll never take their power away because they're controlling everything. The ringing bell was taken directly from Ivan Pavlov's behavioral science theory. Origins of our deceptive and deceiving language. Language is used to interact with one another. It's paramount importance in understanding law. We speak Phoenician each day without even knowing it. It's the language of sound. Before they had the written word, it was an oral history, oral language. Pick up the phone, phonics. Science of sound, from the Greek phone, sound, from pi root ba, to speak, to tell, to say. What is definition? It's a statement of the meaning of the term or the word. Or is it something else? Is it Phoenician that the Phoenicians and the Canaanites have defined the way we speak still to this day, thousands of years later? So you go to the elections and you make your selections, but they're really gross misdirections. When people vote, where do they do so? In a voting terminal or polling station. People are voting, not voting, because they are going to the polls, which the electric battery polls have positive and negative to place their votes on the candidate that they want to see out in charge. The politician that receives the most votes is that one that is going to be put in the position of power. It's called power. It's not called power politics for nothing. It's also why we got credit charge cards. We're using electric. The Electoral College of Electors are the ones that actually determine who will be president, not any popular poll, media, or statistic. Registering to vote is an admission that the declarant is subject to the exclusive legislative power of the corporate Congress and is a 14th Amendment citizen, a second-class citizen when you register. Regis means crown. Stir means to enroll. So you're enrolling in the crown. Regis, crown. By voting, you are contracting as a straw man, a fictitious character in the eyes of the law, a human resource, not a human just being. That's why they call us the Department of Human Resources, just like water resources. All right, a sidebar. Did you know the Jesuits invented the Fahrenheit thermometer? That's why when it unfreezes, it's at 33 degrees. Get it? All right, now we went through the banking stuff already with the liquid, frozen, liquid assets. Common law is also known as Maritime Law. Mar means sea law. This was in the 14th, 15th century. Like I said, the Testamentary Cesquive Trust placed all lost souls at sea. So when we go into court, we sail in on our citizenship to argue about loss and damages of our contractual relationships, partnerships, and ownerships. It's all about monetary loss and injury compensation. Who did what to whom? When we enter the court to play ball, we'll see who win in the docket. This is where the ship's birth. The rules come down from the 3 Blue Masons degrees with phallic gavel to determine who is liable. Okay, resident. Res means property or thing. To identify is ident. Identify the property or thing. You put a P in the front and capitalize it and means principal. So the president of the Corporation of the United States of America, capital letters, Washington, D.C., is the corporate CEO, the president. He's ruling over the property or the thing. That'd be us, folks. Also, when you're born, you slide down your mother's birth canal and you land on your birth certificate where the hospital's paid to register, and so that banksters can account for you into securitized debt from the bankruptcy the United States never got out of since 1933. This is why the more debt they run up, the more we owe, and we never got out of bankruptcy since 1933, and our birth certificates are securitized, tradable commodities. All right, a government. Govern means to rule or control. Ment is for mensa or mind, to control the mind. They tell us what they're doing. Straw man is a front. A third party is put up in name only to take part in the transaction. Term is also used in commercial and property context when a transfer is made to a party. The straw man for the purpose of retransferring the transfer in order to accomplish some purpose not otherwise permitted. We're not humans, folks. We're a legal fictitious entity. Since your birth, your artificial person has been considered a slave or indentured servant to the various federal, provincial, and municipal governments via your state-issued, state-created birth certificate in the name of you in all caps. Your birth certificate was issued so that the issuer could claim exclusive title to the legal person created. This was further compounded when you voluntarily obtained a driver's license and social security number, also all in caps. The state even owns your personal and private life through your state-issued marriage license, issued in all caps. You have had no rights since birth, marriage, nor will you have them even in death unless you recapture your straw man. The name on tombstones and cemeteries are also in all caps. The state holds the title to your legal person. It's created for your birth certificate. That's why they give you a certificate, not the actual title. The holder in due course of the instrument, that is yourself, has to reclaim and redeem it. The straw person is a person according to the legal dictionary. Person, a human being, an entity that, such as a corporation that is recognized by law as having the rights and duties of a human being. So this is how they give you the rights, but they don't give you the acknowledgement as being a human being. So what is a human being? It's a person of the male sex. According to Black's Law Dictionary, which they use in the Roman Catholic law system we're still under today after, since 1400s. A human being is a male sex, a male of the human species above the age of puberty. In the most extended sense of the term includes not only adult male sex of the human species, but women and children. In feudal times, it was vassal, a tenant, or feudatory. All right, April 1933, this is when Roosevelt, the Knights of Malta, and Freemason made executive order. All persons are required to deliver on or May 1st all gold coin bullion now owned by them in the Federal Reserve. So they took our gold away. Now we're $21 trillion in debt, folks. Do you think they're going to do it again to us? Look at the new $100 bill. Half of it is completely in gold on the right side with a gold inkwell, a gold feather, and there's gold writing in the background. And if you look very closely, It's the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence talking about abolishing the government, the new $100 bill issued in 2013. All right, in June 1933, we operate as a commerce. Commerce is based on agreement or contract. It's contractual law. That's why you sign your name, now a thumbprint or a swipe. You are agreeing to the fictitious character as a straw man. When the real flesh and blood step into their process, we become the surety for the fictional straw man. It's a trust. We then become liable for the debts, liabilities, and obligations of the straw man, and we relinquish our protected characters. We stand up for the fictional straw man. This is why when you go into court and the judge says, "Are you so-and-so? Do you understand?" and you say yes, you're agreeing to being that fictitious character. All right, corporation. The word corpse is the base root of corporation. All right? So ration the corp is to ration the corpse, the dead. You're rationing the dead. All right? And in Law's dictionary again, only his successors in some particular station who are unincorporated by law in order to give them some legal capacities and advantages, particularly that of a perpetuity, which in their natural state as persons they could not have. In a corporation's soul, one person holds both operational positions of the organization. A corporation's soul may be established under legislative authority. It is considered by statute a citizen of the government. You are owned. The people are in the state and national government at that time. The public government is an artificial entity. Who is a government? Point to me as a person being a government. The government is owned and controlled by the same people. It's a sole organization, not an aggregate organization. The straw man, being artificial, lives in the artificial place called the public. Okay? This is necessary and proper because the creator and entity has the right and control of it. So we create it by signing our name, and they take control of it by putting us in their system.
I'm going to show you sort of the rank of how the governments sort of really work. It's a system where one would assume that the President of the United States holds sort of the highest rank because he's got the biggest military or whatever. But that's not quite so. There's ranks higher than him that he must obey, so to speak. And if he doesn't obey those ranks, well, then he could destroy the whole system. But I'm going to try and explain or show you, give you a schematic or a diagram of just where these ranks, or how this rank works, and where you as a man or as a Christian or as a pagan sits in this rank. And but just before we do that, the English explanation of this word here, it just simply says a system in which members of an organization or society are ranked according to relative statutes or authority. Now there's two things happening in there: relative statutes or authority. And each meridium or each trust has its own version of laws and statutes and authority, but the trust itself may be answerable to trusts above it. And that's the other thing, where some government workers and some police officers and what have you, even some lawyers are not quite understanding this, the way this system really works. This is a quick rundown of just how the authority kind of works. And first of all, we have God. This God is the God of existence. This God is the one that created all the things that we can see, the world, and that God is the one that we don't really understand. We'll never really comprehend how this whole thing exists or is made, and we don't really have any ability to question that either, because even in trust law, as the hierarchy goes down, this type of system, the lower ranking officers are subordinate to the higher ranking officers. So we'll just see this. Now, even in the Bible, it says never put God to the test, because of the type of system that we're dealing with. It's a trust law system. The next thing is man. God, man. Now, you know, in Adam and Eve and in Genesis, God created man and breathed the life into man after he made him from the earth. And this is basically stating that man has a birthright to the subject matter. He's a part of this world, because this God created the world and also created man in it. That is our true God. But I'm going to sort of show you how we've lost, we're losing this God, so you've got to be careful. The next thing that happened was in the Garden of Eden, God granted dominion, which is the highest of authority, to man. And what man did, what happened in this, by granting the absolute authority, the legal title to man, that granted the equitable title with God. So man was holding the legal title to God. God was the director, and this is still evident, because when this God decides to have a volcano or create a massive earthquake or create a massive storm, there's not much that man can do about it. That's the fury of God. This God, no matter what you do, hate him or love him, whatever happens, you can't question that, and you can't do much about it either, because his fury is of the greatest. And sometimes those storms and that remind us of the respect that we have, or that we should be having, for this God up here. What happened is God granted the legal title to man, so that means man looks after this planet. He's duty bound to look after it. But what he has done, or what's been offered to man, is this thing here, which is called the Vatican. And what that means is V-A-T-I-C-A-N. Vatican, which means that I can, which means holder I can. And that's the third rank down now. This is the beast of burden, and he's offered this up to man, and what he said is, you give me the legal title and I will give you the equitable title, and I will then serve all the debts, settle all the debts of the meridian of the Garden of Eden, which is the earth. So then he controls the he's the debtor, becomes the debtor of man. But man created this. God didn't create it, man did. So the God of the Vatican is man. That's Adam. That means man. Adam means man. Now, why would someone want to pay the debts of man? And that's because this people here, it knows how to confer the debts of man back onto man. Now the next hierarchy down is the debtor. So the Vatican creates a debtor for the Vatican. Man created the debtor to pay the debts of man. It's the Vatican. The Vatican creates a debtor. Babylon. Which means baby for long time. That's what Babylon is. Baby and long, L-O-N. In Latin, it's just child, and lon, L-O-N, means for a long time. And that's probably what the surnames and the infant surname, an infant, so that when you're born, you're birthed into this state of Babylon here, which is really also really or the Roman Empire, or it's the debtor of Rome. And what Babylon does, then it needs to create a debtor. This is the Vatican, and this is really Rome. Babylon is Babel, the old Babylonian text and everything. It's in the Bible. It's Babylon's been recognized. It exists, and it exists today. The United States, the Pentagon, that's Babylon. I'll even show you why with the Babylonian text as well. And what Babylon has done is it created a creditor and a debtor. Creditor and a debtor. And this is what they talk about in the Garden of Eden, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge. Tree of life, tree of knowledge, creditor, debtor. And these two things were accounts. So Babylon had to create a remedy inside this, and to get man to pay his own debts is to turn man into either the debtor of Babylon, so that Babylon could be the debtor of the Vatican, so then the Vatican could be the debtor of man, so that man is the debtor of God. But what this thing here is trying to do is get rid of man, because this is the serpent, the usurper. It usurps in, and if it can get rid of man, then all of the debts that are paid to Babylon and then to the Vatican, if man isn't there, then he gets to keep the loot, keep the gold, keep all of the debts of man. Vatican, the very symbol, is also Vatican, holder I can, and holder is like a valley, which is the banks of a river. It is the first the bank. That is the bank. There. That is the director of the flow of current, the currency, in relation to a charge, when charges are forced against us. Now the trick down here to create the creditor and the debtor, these two accounts are called the Christian and the pagan. Christian and pagan account. So how does it get you to hold the pagan account, which really means pay again account. Pagan, pay again. So why this is paying again is because man's already paid. It's already, his debts are paid by the Vatican. But the Vatican are going to get man to pay the debts again for the second time. So now we have God, then man. Man created the Vatican, the first debtor. The Vatican created Babylon. And Babylon created two accounts, the Christian account and the pagan account. The creditor, the debtor. Life and knowledge. L and K. Kill. L-I-F-E. Life and kill. Now, there's two warnings. When God said to man, he said, whatever you do, you never eat from the tree of knowledge. Don't eat, otherwise you will surely die. That was the warning. Now, in the New Testament, Christ came along and he said that in my name only, my name, which is the name of an account, shall you be saved. My name only. So now we have these two accounts, which is the creditor, the debtor. The tree of life, the tree of knowledge, life, death, death, life. We have, they're called accounts. So this account is the account of the creditor. This is the account of the debtor. Now, how do we get man to hold the accounts of the debtor? And this is probably one of the biggest tricks where the birth certificates and everything come into being. Now we'll name the account, and we'll just show you what's going on. This is the name. This is the name and surname. Have you noticed that's on your birth certificate? And then when you look at your birth certificate, let's talk about John Paul Smith. John Paul When you look at your birth certificate, you're going to see this, and it will say name and surname. Now that's what you will assume, but there's no surname on that document, on the certificate of birth. But there is a name, John Paul, as your Christian name or given name, and then it says surname. And then that's where the Smith will be, the surname. That's made you sort of assume that that's your surname. And then when someone asks you, like a police officer or someone from the state, from the Babylonian state, which is the, at the moment, it is probably the United States Securities and Exchange Commission that owns all of the nations of the world, as well as Canada and as well as Commonwealth of Australia and as well as the United States. Babylon owns these things, and that in the modern day is more than likely the US Federal Reserve, which is a bank, and the United States Securities and Exchange Commission. So if you go into Canada or Commonwealth of Australia or any of the corporations, the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, Microsoft, if you look at these companies, Kentucky Fried Chicken, McDonald's, they are all registered to the United States Securities and Exchange Commission. So they all stem from the one world government, Babylon. Now, when you look at your name, John Paul Smith, if you're illiterate and you don't know what's going on and you haven't been taught how to read the signs at school, and just remember what Christ said. He said, in my name only shall you be saved. And then the other thing he stressed was, you must learn to read the sign, because there's two things happening in this: English and sign. That is called a Babylonian, or it's actually called a Latin or ancient Latin symbolic text. This is a descriptive text. It's completely and utterly different. But if you're an illiterate pleb, actually is what they'll call you, this is what you will assume this name to be. So when a police officer comes to you and says, what's your name and your date of birth, you'll say, oh, sir, my name is John Paul Smith. And yet the name written on the birth certificate says John Paul. So straight away someone's made an error, someone's made a mistake. And if you're the one that's claiming John Paul Smith to be your full name, when John Paul is your full name on the birth certificate, then that police officer has been trained to, as soon as you give a full name, which includes your surname, which is incorporated with your real name, that's an incorporation, and a presumption, he will take authority over you straight away. And what it is, under a form of water law salvage rights, because you're not John Paul, you claim to be John Paul Smith, and John Paul Smith, in law and in fact and in reality, John Paul Smith does not exist. Only John Paul in fact exists. John Paul in reality and in fact, John Paul Smith in reality and fact does not exist. So that enters them into the world of fictions. So rather than you being a man, you will become down here a human. A human, which is the colour of man. Now when you look at the dictionaries again, a human is a monster. And then when you go into monster, the word monster is a fiction. A monster is a fiction. John Paul Smith is a monster because he is a fiction. Also a human. And the other thing which is very strange about this is the minute you incorporate any two items together, any two things together that are incorporated in relation to the Vatican or the water law, it becomes a person. And a person is a corporation, corp speaking, which means dead. So through your own ignorance, what you're stating here is that you are the surname who is dead. Now, no one forced you to do this. You did that. You claimed your name to be the incorporated name because John Paul and Smith don't exist. They exist as two separate entities, but they don't exist as one name. So you're the one that did that. You're the one, through your own ignorance and your own inability, to assume that you are right. Yet Christ comes along and said, no, you've got to learn how to read the sign. He didn't tell you what the sign, he just said you learn how to read the sign. Well, if you know how to read the sign, you'll know straight away that, oh no, that's sign, that's not my name. That's no part of it. Sign is sin. Sign is sin. That's what it means. Even the words S is the snake, I is one, is you, I, and N, S-I-G, which is the governance, and N is mountain and water, which is the Babylonian, which it's not Babylonian. It's the two sides. It's the name and the surname. It is the creditor and the debtor. M is the mountain, and water is the sea. This is the mountain, which is land. This is the sea. But the N, when written, is the two combined. So in the symbolism, when it looks the symbol, this is the snake, which is Satan. You've become dead through your own false presumption that you thought that your name, John Paul, with the all uppercase symbolic Smith, was one name. And the minute you incorporated and you assumed that, this is what you became: human, a fiction, a person, a corporation, dead, and of course a monster. And monsters have to be controlled under statute law. So you've been under the control of statute law, which is not free will, which is under what Satan wanted. You're under the control of S, Satan. And Satan did not give man the free right to make a choice. God gave man the free right to make a choice to enter into the debtor or the creditor. But how you make that choice is by learning what Christ said, by studying the Bible and working out how the Adam and Eve trusts about in relation to 1:26 of Genesis, where God granted dominion to man over the land, the air, the sea, and the thing that creepeth. Now, if you put surname into the Latin dictionary, surname means the thing that creepeth up from below. So what's happened is man has been given dominion over the surname, which is the person, which is the human, which is the fiction, which is the dead corporation. But if you hold any sort of document from the government, such as a driver license, a bank card, or a bank account, or even hold the legal title to your home, if you hold any one of those things, you're dead. You're in the tree of knowledge. You're a debtor. You hold the legal title to it, and you have lost your equity, because in trust law, he who holds legal title cannot touch the equity without license. And this goes right back to the Garden of Eden, because when Adam ate from the fruit of the tree of knowledge, which is the tree of the debtor, when he applied for the credit card, the minute he did that, he was thrown out of the first garden, and the only way he could get back into the Garden of Eden was under license. Now remember that that maxim. He who holds legal title cannot hold the equity without license. And the license to hold the equity is granted from Babylon, which is the Vatican, which is the bank. So when you sit down here, when you're dead, then you need a license to do anything at all. And that's what's happening to you. You want to go fish, you want to do anything, you want to drive a car, because anything you do in Eden, while you're the debtor, you must have a license. Now remember what Christ said over here. He said, in my name you shall be saved. So what happens is this name here, John Paul, is the creditors. The creditor. And because Christ said, in my name you shall be saved, means that you still are living. You are not dead. You are not a fiction. You are not human. You are not a person. You are not a corporation. You are a Christian. There it is there. You are not a pagan. You are simply a true Christian. The Christians that go into the church that you see on every Sunday, they are not Christians. They are pagans. They believe that they're Christian, and that's what this thing is doing. He's the usurper. He's the trickster. Satan is always the Lucifer, the illusionist, where he presents himself as God. Because persons, the only God of a person, which is the only God of a debtor, is Babylon, which is the Vatican. The Vatican created these things here. The Vatican created the incorporation. When two names or two things are joined together, that's it. But when you're Christ, you only have one name. You don't hold any legal title, anything. When you learn how to operate this account, this Christian account over here, you will start to realize that you can have anything you want. Ask and you shall receive. And that's how it really does work. Now, the account name, just to finish off, this is where the real trick has been in here. The Christian account, or the credit account, is John Paul. And the debtor account is the surname. The surname is not just the Smith, because John Paul and the Smith belong to us. That's our name, and this is our heritage. So both names belong to us. So the state can't make a claim over the family name or the heritage or the Christian or the given name. It cannot make a claim. But what it makes a claim over is incorporation. So as soon as these two names are assumed as one, that is the property of the Vatican. That is the state of affairs of that governing system. This is the Christian account written in proper English, and that is the debtor account, the pagan account. That is, so if you hold this name here in proper English, you become the debtor. So when you walk into a court and say, I'm walking into this court, I am a living, breathing man, well, yes, you might very well be that. But the magistrate, who's the administrator, which is Babylon, and the administration, well, it's here. That's what this thing is. There's the I on the bill. The administrator, which is the magistrate, the man will walk in, I am the living, breathing man, Your Honour. And he will say, yeah, well, that's fine. Do you hold a driver license? Yes. What's your name? My name is John Paul Smith. Well, the magistrate is obligated to set up a salvage trust, salvation, for this, because this person down here, this man, has been lost at sea. He doesn't know who he is. He doesn't know his own name. And there's another maxim, is if you know not the name of the thing itself is surely lost. So if you walk into the court and say, I'm the man, but my name is John Paul Smith, and I hold a driver license. The poor old magistrate, he sits there, oh, you know, what can I do about this? Okay, so he sets up a trust and then gives him a little bit of justice that's seen to be done to make him feel a bit better, but still whacks him anyway, and whacks him as a debtor. And then once he's got the debt, he can't get out of it. You've got to pay, because debtors pay the bills. And if you're one of these, the full-on debtor, that's agreed to be John Paul Smith, because you read John Paul and the Smith in sign language and you assumed it together. That's not his problem. You assume that. You didn't do your homework. You didn't learn how to read the sign. You didn't learn your grammar. You learned nothing. You remained as a pleb, as a dumb idiot, as someone that's... You just remained dumb. So the magistrate, he's just got to administer you. The Vatican, he's got to administer all of you. So what he does is that he throws you on the Vatican ship at sea, in the Holy See, and you lose all your rights then to land law. You lose your standing as man and as Adam, and only because God said, whatever you do not eat from the tree, or do not eat the fruit, be a usufruct of the debtor account. Don't do that. Otherwise, you will surely die. There's you there. so that's how the system works. I know it's got nothing to do with law. It's all got to do with God and Christ, because they're the ones that taught you. They're the ones that, well, the Bible sits in the court for that reason. If anyone says that it's not spiritual, of course it's spiritual, because when you walk into those law courts, or those courts, they're not courts, they're tribunals, they're chambers, and a chamber is a tomb. They're dead. That's why the magistrate's wearing that black robe. He's mourning the dead, and you're walking in there and you are dead. You probably go, oh, poor fellas, they're all dead. And very rarely does any one of these ones come into that court. Now, the other slight advice, it's not really advice, but it's when you know where you stand and you are over here and you do hold the driver licenses and you hold the bank loans and you are a good little debtor and you're paying all the bills of the state, and which is very admirable of you for being that. And I think sometimes the state will thank you if you're a hard worker. You will get a good life inside the state. But when it comes into a charge, when you've been charged with any form of a charge account and you are the debtor and you hold the driver license to prove that you're a debtor, because the name of the driver license is written in the all uppercase language, which is called the ledger language, or the dead ledgers that are on tombstones, or it's also called an engraved image, which is another thing that God said, do not worship the engraved images, which are the engraved images that sit on top of the tombstones, which is the ledgers, and that's the stuff that comes in the mail. But in a court, if you are a debtor and you know that you're a debtor, then no matter if you're guilty, no matter if you're not guilty, if you've been charged, then my absolute advice to you is to plead guilty. Still state the case, but make the guilty plea. Because in the United States Libor Code, the enemy of the United States, which is the enemy of Babylon, the enemy of the administrator, is the belligerent officer. And the belligerent officer is the one that pleads not guilty. Because if you walk into a court, you're walking into the court saying, well, yes, I am the debtor and I'm not going to pay your debt. That's what you're saying. The other thing, what it does in a legal sense, the magistrates love it when you plead not guilty, because the minute you plead not guilty, you violate the military codes, which is the law of the sea, the Holy See, and you put yourself into a state of conflict. And once you're in a state of conflict in military law, the administrator has right to administer the conflict. So you're handing over all of the power over you to the state, because you have become the enemy of the state. If you're not guilty, you can only plead guilty and say sorry. Because when you have operated, when you've walked into this and you've chosen to be the debtor of the state, you have no rights. And don't try and get them. Especially the idiot people that walk in and say, I am the living man. You got a driver license? Oh yeah. Lost. Completely dumb, stupid. The other thing is, do you need to come back to living man? One of the biggest things is the difference between coming back to being a living man. You don't have to be a living man. You don't have to come back to walking into that trust, because this is outside the system. Once you simply hold the creditor account, Christ becomes your trustee. Christ is your trustee, and that's all evident on the second certificate of birth, because on the second certificate of birth it states in black and white that the full name John Paul Smith is in the custody of the Registrar General of the certificate of birth, which is the state. So it's stated on that and signed. They've even told you that they own this, and the minute you hold that, then you become the trustee of the Registrar General. But if you don't hold this name and you simply hold this name here, then you become the director of the Registrar General. You don't have to come back to living man, because Christ has given you a remedy within the world of the dead, which is the dead corporations, which is from Christ on down to 2017 AD. From that time we live in the world of the dead, in the chambers of the water law. But inside that system, the Christian trust is the remedy within the world of the dead. The minute you walk into a church, above every church you will see that sign, and that sign means, that's why it's found on top of tombstones as well. It means dead. So when you walk into a church, you know that that is the house of the dead. If you are this over here, a true Christian, then you don't walk into those places, because that is for the quasi-Christian, the people that think they're Christians, but they're not. Even other churches, you'll see that if they ever use this type of writing, the all uppercase text, then if they're using any form of symbolic text on the signs or any form of sign language, it's another dead giveaway. In this all uppercase text, they're telling you that that is sign, that is sin, that is the house of the dead, the cross. So even though people walk and go, I'm going to church and I'm doing whatever it is, all you've got to do is just read the signs, go into the dictionaries, the legal dictionaries and the Webster's dictionary, start having a look at these signs, and it tells you in black and white everything. But the whole thing of the world of the dead that belongs to the administrator, which is Babylon, which is the Vatican. If you're down here, then you are subject to that. If you're over here, then you are still got the ability of living man, yet you hold the account that directs the Vatican. That's why the Vatican probably doesn't really like real Christians. It creates its own quasi-Christians in all of its church because it knows it keeps them, or keeps the masses, under control. But when you work it out, usually criminals don't work this out. The people that do work it out are usually the people that do love God and hold this God here as the true God, as they should. And when you do that, then you are subject to the laws of the Bible, like the statutes that make up the 10 Commandments, and also Christ, which is, if you love your neighbour in a spirit of brotherhood, then no war would ever happen. But people that are with this God automatically know that they are subject to the real laws of the Bible, and they wouldn't do anything against their own brother or their own neighbour that they wouldn't like to happen to them. So the people that do work it out and that don't need to be controlled by the state don't need to be controlled by the state, because they are the true solemn people that have worked this out. So I hope that explains the hierarchy and the principle of how our governing system works today in this modern day society. It's ancient and it's never going to change. It dates back thousands and thousands of years.
This is necessary and proper because the creator and entity has the right and control of it. So we create it by signing our name, and they take control of it by putting us in their system. Since the government has created the straw man, it is only right that the straw man live under the rules of its creator. So far, the readers might be saying to themselves, what? Precisely, watt. A watt is a unit of power that is equal to 1 joule per second, and this correlates with the situation when people say someone isn't very bright because they need to ask the same question over again. What? What? Wait. That person is said to be dim because they are not enlightened. Dim-wit. You could, of course, refuse everything that is being shown, but that just creates a negative ionic polarity charge within your own biology. Hence, to refuse, because a fuse is an electrical device that interrupts the flow of current if it becomes overloaded. I trust this will not confuse the readers. The use of the word PIN is the reason that banks get you to use a PIN number when using a bank card. Well, the Spanish word born translates to terminal and the point of connection to current of electricity. When people travel to and from airports or bus stations, where they arrive and depart? At the terminal. And as I said, when you use the credit card, you are charged as in charge card. Logos translates to ratio, symbol, reason, idea, and logic. The ancient Greek believed that the power of the logos can be expressed through words and be used to create mystical things through sound. Have you ever wondered why the symbols of corporations are called logos? It has to do with magic and sacred geometry. The process of using logos, source, energy, and force to create things such as sacred geometry can be seen in somatics. That is where sound is used to create geometric, sacred geometric forms. All right, cosmology and language. You know how the day of the week got their name. Sunday, it represents the mineral gold. It represents the sun's day. Monday is the moon day for Luna or Lunatics Day. Tuesday is Iron, Marti or Mars, or Tyre's god of war after the Norway god. Wednesday is under Quicksilver, the day of Mercury. It's Woden's Day, another Norwegian god. Thursday is the tin of Jupiter. That's Thor's Day. Okay. Friday is Copper or Venera, Venus, God. Freya's Aphrodite's Day. Friday, Freya's Day. Saturday is Saturn's Day, the god of agriculture and lead, because it's so heavy and dense. There's 7 days of the week. There's 7 sacred planets. There's 7 sacred metals of ancient alchemy, 7 continents, 7 seas, 7 energy chakras in the human body, 7 colors of the rainbow, 7 tones in our voice, 7-year itch, 7 hills in Rome, 7 hills in Washington, D.C., and 7 wonders of the ancient world in the 7th heaven. And look at how one is born into the world, or world. Why are we world? First off, from a pedantic perspective, this should be obvious since the world is world on its axis. The writer of the Matrix movies also knew why, because the main character Neo is actually derived from the Latin word neo that means spin or wave. The separation of our body from the sun works in a 7-step process. This is why there are 7 major planets and give us 7 days of the week. There are 7 notes in the mode of music, and we also see 7 in the rainbow. The color, sounds, and words that are world are all separated because the prefix sep comes from septum, meaning 7, which gives us the word September, which was originally the 7th month of the Roman calendar. There are 7 chakras in the human body. The ancients called spinning the wheels of light. This is appropriate because their colored wheels are world, and we live in a world of colors because we are humans. Now you know why it's called humans. Hue is simply a word for color, and the quality of color determines the dominant wavelength of each color. There is an astounding amount of indication and evidence to show that we are multidimensional beings that are caught in a cycle of separation, which is a certain mathematical ratio of vibration waves holding us prisoner in an endless movie-like loop. The ratio is a ration of the God ratio within the base 10 reality. 10 fingers and 10 toes, as the Swedish Teo states, with the meaning of 10. The fake gods that hold us all prisoner also need a ration us because we are their food, and a ration is the food allowance given for one day. The separation that is given to the gods while we exist inside of this are cinematic matrix reality. Here's an important one. Soldiers are sold to die. Soldiers sold to die. And that is why they have dog tags issued to them. As Henry Kissinger has famous said, they're the dogs of war. We are told never to swear. Notice the word where with the S in front. It can go both ways. Yet when we go into court, we must raise our hands and swear to tell the truth, the whole, with the hole in it, truth, and nothing but the truth. Yet few judges can even tell you the difference between the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I know because I've asked judges and they can't tell you. All right, when we submit, we place ourselves under the control of another. So when you submit an application, you are yielding your power. You let down, you put under, you reduce. When you apply for an application, you put one's faculties to some task or career. Is there a war on drugs? Then why are there drugstores on every corner? Is there a war on drinking and driving and DUI, driving under the influence? Why do they sell liquor at gas stations? To get you gassed? So this is why bail-ins are becoming so common now around Europe. A bail-in is when the banks come and take your money out of your account and say, sorry, it's not there anymore. They're called a rehypothecation. This is stealing by the banks and brokers for their own purposes, are called a bail-in. This is happening more and more, and with the United States, $21 trillion in current debt, I guarantee you money in your bank account is going to be taken at one time or another, folks, because it's a promissory note and it's not your money. It's electronics on a screen, but you go and try and get your money out of there more than a few grand. Good luck with that. And if you do get more than a few grand and have to fill out all the forms, the IRS is going to contact you. Department of Homeland Security is going to attack you as well. And if you believe the FDIC has enough insurance to cover all your money in the bank and everybody's, think again, folks. We're $21 trillion in debt. How can they have money but print more money of fake non-value behind it? This is why they're coming for the gold. All right, a police state is a revenue agent making money, revenue agent that enforces the corporate government contracts and protects the assets of the corporate government, including human resources. It compels performance, no injured party necessary. One who has policing powers is found in a police state. They're enforcers of policies. That's why they become policemen. And to register literally is to the queen, as I said. The regis meaning king. This is why you get a certificate and not title on your cars as well. The original car manufacturer owns the title, but you get the certificate. When you enroll, you register your child. You put it into inventory. Did you know that? People are known as chattel in legalese. We call our animals cattle. They call us chattel. Again, this is why we're called human resources. And just substitute the word water for humans and we're water resources. And on international, now another important thing is that our court systems, every time you challenge up. So you go from the local to the state to the federal, and now you go into international laws. And it's even more corrupt the higher you go. So you never get satisfaction. It's by design. All right, the matrix is furthermore the Latin word for womb, which is where our body ship is birthed and birthed. All ships find their birth when they reach the port or dock. When Neo woke up in the Matrix, he was inside a battery womb or iPod, which is why Apple Computer sells everyone iPods and iPads to reflect this. The definition of pad that concurs with this is that of temporary living quarters. We're all living on our iPads or iPods because we bit the apple of sin. Now you see here on the left that the original Apple computer sold for $666.66. Not a coincidence, folks, or coincident. The word apple is also phonetically spoken as a pull because our body ships are receiving a tow on the consciousness dreamline of reality, which is why we have a skull. A skull, yes, because a skull is an oar that is used for sculling, and a sculling is the propelling of a boat by an oar of the stern. John Scully ran Apple Computer for 10 years. Another coincidence. Everything in this reality is designed to make us fearful, and this starts right at birth. It has been said over and over again to humanity that man is born in sin. Man bit the apple to then continuously be reborn in his or her Apple iPods, which becomes unrepayable debt. That is why Webster's dictionary defines English word debt is sin, to pay the debt of sin, which is the price of our birth or birth in the moon. Remember that 7 days of the week do not include an earth day, since man is truly born in sin. All right, another important one. How do you say hi to somebody? You say hello. Every time we say hi to somebody, we're saying them to go to hell. This is how much control they got over our language. Every ship, including the human body, is eventually brought into port and then is docked. This is why there's a doctor that delivers the body ship, because it is a new liver or liver being produced. Another living being that is being delivered by the doctor as docked ore. Hence, doctor is phonetically docked ore, and you as a human being are the ore or the ore that is going to be mined for gold in your mind, because mind is mind, giving us the actual basis of the Sumerian depiction of the Anunnaki coming here for gold, because we are the human resources that mined for gold. It's all a play on words, folks, but it has secret meanings behind it. This also displays the fact that humans are seen as chattel property or false gods. When they say it's mine, we are the endless resource being mined, and companies do not have human resource departments because the title sounds fancy. You're also ore, which has an oar because you're the body ship that needs to paddle through this existence, which is the sea of electricity. Doctors use paddles to resuscitate someone who is in the cardiac arrest for this reason. Why do they use to resuscitate the patient? They use electrical currents, just like the sea that has currents. What else do doctors do? They perform surgery because of an electrical surge to the body patient. The docked ore is also the connection to the body ship in sea terminology. Also, our money is currency, since the doctor has delivered the docked ore, an ore that is sitting in its berth and no longer rolling. All right, a double cross. We see them in the logos all the time. Look at on Exxon. Look at there. It's a double cross. Nabisco, a double cross. They're double crossing us, folks. An act of betraying an ally, friend, or associate. The cross of Lorraine has long a history of use in the secret societies. The Illuminati bloodlines, including the double crosses, use the crest of the Lithuania, Hungary, and Slovakia. The Knights of Malta use the red cross, as does the largest oil company in the world, Exxon, Nabisco, etc., etc. So anyway, I just wanted to give you a whole list of these languages that we language in, and how our language betrays us, and how they use it against us. And the court system is rigged to put us on our ships and fictitious characters as straw man, and we have to get off the ship. We have to get away from the legal system. We have to create our new languages, or we're going to languish in their dominance as we have been for thousands and thousands of years, and we have to stop the Babylonian days that have been going on forever.